Wyoming Territory, late spring of 1874, the wind off the plains carried dust and judgment in equal measure. People in Scatter Creek did not look at her, not really. They glanced, whispered, stepped aside like touching her would bring the sickness. She was too thin, too pale, and too alone. The townsfolk had long decided that Priscilla Jane was not worth the bother. She sat outside the general store, knees tucked to her chest, arms wrapped tight around herself. Her boots were worn thin, her dress hung off her bony frame, and her cough, dry and rattling, had chased away every ounce of pity anyone might have once felt. Most days, she did not speak. She just sat, waiting for something she could not name. The only thing keeping her from fading entirely was the bread Mrs. Hargreaves left out back when no one was watching, and the memory of her father's hands building the cabin they had lost the winter he passed. She had no family left, no home. And no one in town wanted to help the sick girl who looked like a ghost in shoes. The man who changed everything rode into Scatter Creek with the dust cloud behind him and the sun behind his shoulder. He was tall, broad, with a rifle slung across his back, and a quiet way about him. His name was Prescott Sutton. Folks called him Preston, though he never said if he liked it or not. He worked cattle out east but came west looking for something he did not talk about. He saw her the moment he stepped off his horse at the general store, just a bundle of bones and sad eyes on the porch. She was not begging, she was not even crying, she was just there. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Priscilla blinked up at him, throat too dry to answer. "Do you need water?" She nodded once. He handed her his canteen without hesitation. She drank slow, careful not to cough too hard. When she handed it back, her fingers trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Priscilla Jane." He nodded. "Preston Sutton." And just like that, he sat down beside her. She stared, confused. "You do not have to sit here, I know. People think I am sick." "You are," she lowered her eyes. "But you are still human," he added. "That counts for something?" She looked at him like he had said a thing no one had ever bothered to. That night, he asked old man Barnaby at the livery if she had somewhere to sleep. Barnaby spat and told him to stay out of it. That girl was a burden, always had been. Preston did not say another word. He just walked back to her and held out a hand. "I have a camp outside town, clean water, firewood, you can rest there." She hesitated. "Why? You look like you need someone," he said. And I got no reason not to help. That night, under the stars, she sat wrapped in a blanket, eating beans by the fire. She coughed hard between bites, but her eyes stayed open and her shoulders began to loosen. "You have family?" she asked. "No," he said. "Not anymore." "Me neither." He looked across the fire at her. "You always been here, born here?" "My father died in the blizzard 2 winters back. My mother got sick. By the time she passed, no one would come near me." He nodded slowly. "They say your kind of sickness is catching." "Maybe it is," she said, "but loneliness is worse." Preston did not smile, but something softened in his eyes. "You ever want to leave this place?" She looked back toward the dark line of town. "I did. But I got too weak." "Then I guess we will get you strong again." She stared at him, breath catching. "You do not know me." "I know enough. You did not beg, you did not lie, you are still holding on even if it hurts. That is worth something." The next few days passed slow. Preston made sure she ate what he could spare, kept her warm, and let her rest. He said little, but he was always nearby, cutting wood, tending fire, brushing down his horse. She watched him like she was learning what safety looked like. One afternoon she asked, "What did you come west looking for?" He was stirring stew. He paused. "Peace." "Did you find it?" He looked up at her. "Maybe I just did." She looked away, cheeks red. Her health came back in pieces, a little more strength in her arms, a little less coughing. Her eyes lost that haunted look. By the second week, she was helping him wash clothes in the creek, laughing once when he slipped on a rock. "You laugh?" he asked, smiling for the first time. "Not often," she said. "But you are not very graceful." He shook his head. "Nope. Never been." That night she sat beside him closer than usual. Their shoulders touched. The fire cracked loud between them. "Do you believe in second chances?" she asked quietly. "I do," he said. "I think they are rare, but they are real," she nodded. "I do not know what I am anymore." "You are someone who got up when everything told you to stay down." She looked at him, eyes wide. "I do not know how to thank you." "You do not have to," but she did, every time she smiled, every time she stood. Every time she looked at him like he was the first person to see her as more than her bones. By the third week, she walked beside him into Scatter Creek for supplies. People stared, but she held her head high. Preston kept her close, his hand protectively on her back. No one said a word. Later, outside the store, she whispered, "They still hate me." "Let them," he said. "They do not get a say in what you are worth." She turned to him slowly. "I never thought I would leave this town alive." "You will," he said, "and you will not be alone." She blinked. "What does that mean?" He looked at her long and quiet. "It means if you want it, I will stay with you, build a life, a real one," her breath caught. "Why?" "Because I have never met anyone braver than you," he said. "And I want to be the man who stands beside that kind of woman." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She reached for his hand. He held it like it was something sacred. "I would like that," she whispered. And in that moment, under the clean Wyoming sky, with the wind soft and the town behind them, something whole began. Neither of them let go. The wind had changed. It wasn't just warmer, it carried the scent of cottonwood waking along the creek banks, and the faint sweetness of wild plum blossoms deeper in the valley. Priscilla could feel it in her chest, a loosening, like the tight thread of survival had slackened just enough to let her breathe easy. She stood at the edge of Preston's camp, watching the back of his shoulders as he sawed through a length of lodgepole pine. He didn't talk much when he worked, but he didn't have to. She'd learned the rhythm of his silences. Some were focused, some thoughtful, some just comfortable. This one was the kind that settled soft between them. "I want to earn my place," she said, not loud. Preston straightened, brushing sawdust from his hands. "You already have, I mean with the work," she said quickly. "I can cook, I know how to mend. I can keep things clean." He tilted his head, considering her. "I'm not asking to be taken care of, I want to be useful." He nodded once. "All right, you'll take the north fence line with me tomorrow and check it for breaks. We'll ride out before sunup." She blinked, surprised. "I thought you might say no." "I don't keep people beside me just to look at them." She looked down, but her mouth curved a little, a new expression she hadn't worn in years. They set out before the sky turned pink, two silhouettes skimming the edge of sagebrush and open grass. The horses moved slow at first, feeling out the uneven earth after the spring thaw. Priscilla kept her back straight, reins steady, even when the wind picked up dust and needled her cheeks. "You said you worked cattle back east," she said after a while. Preston adjusted the brim of his hat. "Kansas, on a rail line outfit. We drive herds from the Flint Hills to Abilene." "Do you miss it?" "Parts of it." "Which parts?" He glanced over. "The nights on the trail when everything else fell away." "Just the stars and the fire and the feel of the herd moving like one creature." She nodded slowly. "I used to like the early mornings, when my father would start the stove and the frost was still on the windows." They rode in silence a while after that. The fence line was mostly intact, save for one break near a gully where runoff had softened the posts. Preston set to digging a new hole while Priscilla steadied the post. Her hands blistered quick, but she didn't complain. When the work was done, they sat on a flat rock and passed a strip of dried venison between them. "I never thought I'd be out here like this," she said, wiping her hands on her skirt. "You didn't plan to live?" he asked, not unkindly. "I didn't plan anything. I just woke up each day and tried not to fall apart." He studied the horizon. "You could still leave Scatter Creek." She looked at him sharp. "Do you want me to?" "No," he said, "but you should know it's your choice." She stared at her hands a moment. "I spent so long thinking I didn't have any." "You've got one now," he said, "and I'd like you to stay, but only if it's what you want." The sun pressed low as they made their way back, golden light catching in the folds of the land. At camp, she stirred the stew pot while he unrolled canvas for the evening. They didn't speak much, just moved around each other like two people who'd already learned the shape of the other's quiet. Later, as the fire burned low, she said, "The women in town used to look right through me. Like I'd already died." Preston's face didn't change. "They'll learn different." "I'm not sure I care anymore," he met her eyes. "That's good," she hesitated. "I was afraid to care about anyone again, I know. But you didn't ask for anything from me." "I didn't have to." She looked at him, steady. "I want to build something, not just survive." He reached across the space between them and took her hand. "So do I." She didn't pull away. That night when they turned in, she lay beneath the stars with her shoulder touching his through the blanket. She didn't speak, but her breath moved easy and her fingers curled lightly against the edge of his coat. In the dark, he stayed awake a while, not watching her, just listening. To the wind, to the horses shifting in the grass, to the quiet, steady breathing of a woman who'd stopped waiting to be seen. And for the first time in years, he felt like he'd found the place he could stop wandering. The first rain came in the night, soft and steady, like the sky was washing the last of winter into the soil. By morning, the creek had swelled, and the air smelled of wet grass and pine bark. Priscilla rose early, brushing water from her sleeves as she stepped out of the lean-to Preston had built near the stand of furs. She found him splitting kindling beside a stump, his coat damp at the shoulders. "I can take the wash to the rocks," she said, tying her hair back with a strip of muslin. "It'll dry quick once the sun comes out." He handed her the bucket without looking up. "Don't go barefoot, creek's running high." "I won't." She waited a breath. "There's a woman in town who used to apprentice with a midwife, Mary Jessup. She's been asking around about you." Preston paused, axe held mid-air. "What for?" "Didn't say, just that she heard you're setting up out here." "She asked if you were married." Priscilla's voice was even, but her fingers tightened around the bucket's handle. He drove the axe down in one clean stroke. "What did you tell her?" "That I was your wife." He looked over at her then, expression unreadable. "I didn't mean to lie," she said quickly. "It just came out. I didn't like the way she asked." He set the axe aside and wiped his palms on his trousers. "I don't mind it," she blinked. "You don't?" "I've been thinking on it," he said, "not just because of Mary Jessup. Because of us." She stood still, weight shifting in her boots. "Look," he continued, "I never planned on settling, thought I'd drift till the trail ran out. But you've got a way of turning quiet into something that feels like home. I don't reckon I want to keep calling you anything but wife." Her throat tightened. "Do you mean it?" "I do." She stepped closer, reins still clinging to the grass beneath them. "Then ask me proper." He reached for her hand, rough palm against her chilled fingers. "Priscilla Jane, will you marry me?" She nodded, tears catching at the corners of her mouth. "I will." They were wed 3 days later under a cottonwood by the creek with only the wind and the sky as witnesses. He carved 2 rings from elk horn, smooth and simple. She wore hers on a cord around her neck, tucked close to her heart. After, he cleared a patch of land near the rise where the earth held dry even after rain. She planted onions and beans, and beneath the window of their small cabin, she coaxed wildflowers into blooming. He worked the frame while she stitched curtains from an old flour sack, humming under her breath. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridge, she leaned against the doorframe, watching him hammer a hinge into place. "My mother used to say if you can't find peace in a house, you won't find it anywhere." He glanced over. "What do you think?" "I think I've never felt more settled." He set the hammer down and crossed to her. "Then I reckon we did something right." They ate on the porch that night, sharing cornbread and boiled greens, feet bare, the last light turning the prairie gold. Later, as the sky deepened, she asked, "Do you miss the road?" He shook his head. "Not when I'm with you." She leaned into his side. "They won't understand it, you know, the folks in town." "They don't have to." She looked up at him. "I used to think no one'd ever see me as more than what I'd lost." "I don't see what you lost," he said. "I see what you kept." She rested her head against his shoulder. "I feel strong around you." "You are strong," he said. "I just notice it." The stars came out slow, one by one, until the sky was full. He wrapped his arm around her, and they sat like that, quiet and easy, with nothing between them but warmth and the soft promise of everything still to come. By early June, the valley had turned lush and green, and the cottonwoods along the creek stood full with new leaves. The cabin sat snug against the rise, its roof now shingled with split pine, and the smell of fresh cut grass clung to everything. Priscilla stood in the doorway one morning, apron damp, holding a basket of eggs gathered from the hens they'd bartered for with a trapper passing through from Fort Laramie. Preston reached for a tin pail beneath the porch, wiping his hands on his trousers. "We'll need to patch the south wall," he said. "Rain's creeping in under the sill." "I can chink it after I finish the soap," she said. "If there's time before supper." He paused, eyeing her wrist. "You've been resting like the doctor said." "I've been slower," she replied. "That's close enough." He didn't argue, just walked over, took the basket from her and set it on the table inside. "I'm not breaking," she said, arms crossed lightly. "I know," he said, "but you've been carrying more than just chores." She looked down at her hands. "It's strange. I was never supposed to make it this far." "You did," he said. "You made it all the way here." She touched her belly then, not with fear but the kind of wonder that had no words yet. "I didn't think I could carry a child." He stepped close, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not alone in this." They didn't talk about names yet. That would come in time. That afternoon, they rode out together to check the upper field where Preston had been clearing brush for the garden plot. She walked beside the mare on foot, careful of the uneven ground. New growth curled up from the turned earth, and further off, the blue hills shimmered faintly in the sun. "Do you ever miss fighting?" she asked, her voice casual. He looked at her sideways. "You think I was a fighter?" "You've got the look of someone who had to earn his quiet." He didn't answer right away. "Then I ran messages during the war. Cavalry units out of Missouri rode through gunfire more than once." She pressed her palm to his. "You never said. You never asked." They sat by the fence he'd strung from cedar posts, watching two young does pick their way through the tall grass. Priscilla leaned against the rail, her face turned toward the light. "There's a dry midwife 2 ridges over," she said. "Sally Whitcomb. I heard she helps women who don't have kin." "I'll ride for her tomorrow," he said. Without hesitation, she nodded. "I want to birth here, at home." He didn't question it. "Then we'll make it ready." That evening, she cooked with her sleeves rolled high, steam rising from the stew pot while the wind rattled gently against the shutters. Preston sat at the table, whittling a spoon from soft aspen. He'd carved 3 that week already, the handles all slightly different, though he hadn't said why. "Do you want a boy or a girl?" she asked, setting bread to cool on the windowsill. He looked up. "I want a child who knows they're wanted." She smiled, soft and tired. "You've got a way of saying things that stick in a person's chest." He set the spoon down. "I mean them." Later that night, she woke to the sound of coyotes yipping far off, the sound high and thin like laughter lost on the wind. Preston stirred beside her, then settled again when she pressed her hand to his chest. "You awake?" she whispered. "I am now." She was quiet a moment. "I think I'm afraid." "Of what?" "That something will take this from us." He pulled her close, his voice steady in the dark. "Nothing's taking you, not while I've got breath in me." She tucked her face against his neck, breathing in the scent of sun-dried cotton and wood smoke. "If it's a girl," she murmured, "I want to name her after my mother." "All right," he said. "That's what we'll do." The coyotes moved off, their cries fading into the stillness that followed. Outside, the fireflies blinked slow and quiet through the grass, and the air smelled faintly of calamus and wet earth. Inside, the cabin held steady. So did they. By midsummer, the cabin's roof had settled into its pitch, and the vegetable rows climbed steadily under Priscilla's careful tending. The soil, once stubborn with frost, now gave freely. Beans threaded upward, and squash vines sprawled across the southern plot. She moved slower these days, one hand often resting at the small of her back, but her steps were steady, her eyes bright with something deeper than contentment. Preston had traded 2 cured hides and a half-pound of tallow soap for a second-hand rocker. He carried it up the hill himself, one hand grasping the curved back, the other steadying the legs as he climbed. She was hanging linens when she saw him, and she set the basket down without folding the last shirt. "You carried that all the way from town. Didn't see much sense waiting on a wagon." She ran her fingers along the worn arms, smoothing the grain with her thumb. "It's beautiful." He shifted his weight. "I thought maybe you'd like it near the hearth. For when you're nursing." Her breath caught not from surprise but from how plainly he'd said it. She stepped close and laid her hand over his heart. "I do like it, and I like you for thinking that far ahead." He kissed her forehead, warm and deliberate. Later that day, they walked the perimeter of the property with Sally Whitcomb, the midwife. She wore moccasins and a faded blue scarf tied at her throat, and her voice carried the calm of someone who'd seen both loss and joy in equal measure. "You've got good air up here," she said, examining the slope behind the cabin. "And the girl's strong. She'll do fine." Priscilla didn't say much while Sally unpacked her satchel inside linen wraps, willow bark, a small carved spoon for broths. When the midwife stepped outside to check on her mule, Priscilla turned to Preston. "She reminds me of someone, though I can't say who." He set down the stack of kindling he was carrying. "She's got that look like she's not surprised by much." She asked what we planned to name the child. "What did you say?" I told her we'd wait until we saw who came. In the weeks that followed, the rhythm of their days adjusted. Preston rose early and spent long hours reinforcing the chicken coop and digging a second well. Priscilla spent more time inside, preserving berries in jars and sewing small garments from muslin and leftover flannel. She never lingered in bed, though she took her rest when her back ached. She lit the stove each morning, and he made sure she never carried more than she should one afternoon. A thunderhead rolled in from the west, and as the first drops hit the porch roof, Priscilla stood holding the doorframe, her face tilted to the gray sky. "I used to be afraid of storms," she said. He stepped beside her, his hand brushing the small of her back. "And now, I think they sound like something being made new," he nodded. "They do." That night she woke him with a quiet touch to his shoulder. He reached for the lantern without speaking, then helped her to the rocker. Sally arrived before dawn, her mule slick with rain. She tied it fast, brushed the water from her sleeves, and stepped into the cabin with practiced calm. The hours that followed were quiet, broken only by the low creak of wood, the rustle of cloth, and Priscilla's even breaths drawn slow through her nose. Preston stayed near, crouched beside the bed, one hand wrapped around hers. When the cries came, they came soft and sure. A daughter, born with hair like wheat and lungs that filled the cabin with life. Sally wrapped the infant in a shawl and laid her against Priscilla's chest. The baby blinked once, then nuzzled close. "Her name is Mabel," Priscilla whispered. "Mabel Louise." Preston leaned down and kissed them both, his voice thick. "You did it?" "No," she said, eyes shining. "We did." After Sally left and the cabin settled into stillness, Preston rocked Mabel while Priscilla dozed. He hummed under his breath, something wordless and low, and watched the firelight flicker across the floorboards. By the end of August, the garden had slowed, but the pantry shelves were full. Mabel slept snug in the cradle Preston had shaped from cottonwood, her breath soft and even. Priscilla sat beside him on the porch as the sun lowered, her hair braided back, her hands quiet in her lap. "I used to wonder what it would be like to feel safe," she said after a long silence. He turned toward her, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. "And now," she smiled, the lines at her eyes deepening with peace. "Now I feel it every day I wake beside you." They watched the last light fade, the ridge turning to shadow and the first night sound stirring in the grass. Inside, Mabel stirred once, then settled again with a sigh. Preston pulled Priscilla gently to her feet. "Come inside, it's getting cool." She leaned her head against his shoulder as they crossed the threshold. "We've built something good, haven't we?" He kissed her temple. "We have," and they had. The cabin stood firm, the earth gave generously, and the home they'd made rang with laughter and breath and warmth. They lay down that night with Mabel between them, Her tiny hands curled into fists, and the wind moved gentle through the trees outside, carrying only peace.